Welcome to Summer School, Club Fantasy's best ball podcast, streaming exclusively on YouTube. Streamingly. That's a real nice start. That's a good word. Streamingly. I am your host, Austin Amandolia. And before I introduce our co-host today, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, all the good stuff. As you can see, my co-host Matt Record has been enjoying the Fantasy Football Expo this weekend, and so he's not here tonight. And shout out to everyone at the expo. It looked like a great time. I'll just sit here and cope with my FOMO like I do every year. It's all good. But with me tonight, I have Chris Molina at ChrisMo2413 of Club Fantasy and author of our weekly prop betting article. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Another week closer to the NFL season.
Yeah, another slate of preseason games to get excited in. I decided throw like a couple lineups out just for funsies to see what happened.
I hate preseason. I hate it. It's such a tease. Everyone uses preseason to hype up everyone they've been hyping up all summer, or to, I guess, what's the other word for hype? Like anti-hype. Everyone they've been hating on. Yeah, I just want the real thing to be here already.
Yeah, preseason is like a Rorschach test for fantasy analysts. And back with us this week, we also have Benny Israel at Benny_bestball. Benny, how are you this week?
Good. Just got back from a week at the beach again, so got to readjust for this week and really load up on some best ball lineups.
There you go. Well, I'm very excited for this week. Not only are we 24 days away from the start of the NFL season, but it is also week 19 of Major League Baseball best ball contest on Underdog, which means it's advancement week, baby. And I am advancing in 7 of my 16 tournaments, and I am very pumped about that and excited to see what happens over the next few weeks. But we're not here to talk about baseball. Maybe we'll do some of that in the winter months once football goes quiet. But before we get into our show tonight, I just want to remind everyone, it is Women of Fantasy Football Month. We are on our 4th season of our Women of Fantasy Football podcast. You can follow Women of Fantasy Football at women_of FF. Or is it women_of_FF? I'll clarify that. You can follow us on Twitter. And our podcast continues on Wednesday, where Kelly Singh and Faith Enos will interview Hope Myers and Vikings beat reporter Lindsey Young. Also, we're going to be announcing the winners of our raffle for a signed Justin Jefferson and a signed Adrian Peterson jersey. The link to enter that raffle is in the chat. All raffle entries will benefit Galvanize, which provides workshops, trainings, and more to support women looking to start or advance their careers in sports. You won't want to miss this. I know I will be watching and getting my raffle tickets in for those great shirts. Jerseys. They're called jerseys. I know that.
Tomato.
We call them jerseys to make ourselves feel better, right? But
right.
Tonight, we're going to continue talking about best ball tournament contests, and we're particularly discussing some team takes. We're going to talk a little bit underdog versus DraftKings, which I'm excited about. It's something new that we're doing tonight. We're going to talk about overlay and why does it matter. That is a very technical, weedsy term, and I'm excited to talk about it because it's not something we talk about a lot, but it's an important way to gain an advantage in best ball leagues. And then we're going to review some actual drafts. I threw some of mine in there. I threw some other people's in there that I don't even know. Chris threw some in there. Benny threw some in there. I don't even know where they came from. We're going to throw up some drafts. And we're going to talk about them. Reminder, send in questions. If you drop them in the chat, we'll get to them in future episodes. But now we're going to dive right into our questions and start with just what is a team that we think everyone is fading that we are much higher on. So a team that we are higher on that everyone else is fading. I did this with 2 Rams fans in a year where everybody's just hating on the Rams. So I kind of made a proxy rule of like, hey, maybe don't say the Rams, even though they're a decent answer for this question. But Chris, let's start with you. Who is someone you are high on that everyone else is fading?
I like the Commanders this year. Eric Bieniemy coming to town. I've always liked Sam Howell. I thought he was the best QB prospect in that draft. So I'm a little biased in hoping that Sam Howell produces. But Terry McLaurin was wide receiver 14 last year. He's like in the wide receiver. I think I just did a draft where he was like the wide receiver 21. Dotson was in the 7th round when he has flashes of when he was healthy. He had top 5, top 10 potential, of course, up and down, but we're in best ball, right? And then the running backs, like if they're going to utilize Antonio Gibson in the passing game, Brian Robinson in the running game, they both have potentially top 24 upside, maybe back end top 24, but where you're getting them in the 8th, 9th, 10th round sometimes. I just feel like Washington's a team to look for. You're basically getting everyone at their floors, in my opinion. So why not?
Yeah, that's a fun one. Plus, if Sam Howell doesn't start, Jacoby Brissett is there, and he ran a good offense in Cleveland last year. So I'm kind of down with Jacoby Brissett running that offense personally.
That too.
Sam Howell has the rushing upside, but if you're taking the positional players outside of quarterback, like I don't think you have to worry about a quarterback change impacting how those receivers perform throughout the season.
I agree with that. Jacoby Brissett and Sam Howell can both be taken in the 18th round.
Gosh, they're free. That's just it's malpractice. Come on. Benny, what about you? Who is someone you're higher on that think people are just too low on, they're fading this year?
So this might change a little bit with some recent news, but every time I log on to Underdog, I'm surprised that there's only one player in the top 80 of ADP on this team, and it's the Saints. I love Chris Olave. I think he's obviously priced up where he should be. Michael Thomas isn't hurt yet, so fingers crossed right there. Hopefully he can stay healthy. I think this offense can be explosive even when Kamara is missing his 3 games, which is honestly a lighter suspension than most people have thought. I kind of expected his ADP to skyrocket over these past couple weeks, and it's really just stayed the same. I mean, I've been scooping him about a little bit more since he hasn't risen too much. So, and then just to icing on the cake, their schedule is looking pretty easy with the defenses they face. So they match up against the AFC South, NFC North, and their own division, the NFC South. And in those divisions, really, the Packers might be the best one, might be the best defense they face out of those 3 divisions. And I know Austin's not too big on Taysom Hill, but Derek Carr, he's only been top 20 in red zone completion percentage over the last 3 years. And the year he was in the top 20, he was only 12th. I could see them continuing to use Taysom as the vulture thorn in the side of this backfield.
Yeah, I've started to come around on Taysom Hill in best ball, which I hate. Just not DFS. Don't play that game of DFS. Don't play it in redraft. Best ball is the place to be drafting Taysom Hill.
We can agree there.
I also there's some other like very late round players on the Saints that I'm interested in. Like A.T. Perry is someone that in the draft process I was interested in, and then he did pretty well in his preseason game. Now I'm not going to try and do the preseason hype thing too much, but I am interested in him. And if Michael Thomas does get hurt, A.T. Perry seems like he could have a role there as well. So I'm good. I like the Saints. That's a good pick for me. Oh, go Chris.
I was just going to say just one quick thing to add. How about Kamara in the 8th round? Isn't he suspended for 2 games?
3 games. Yeah. 3 games.
3 games. Okay. So
he's still in the 8th round. Like, that just, it feels too low.
In my opinion, he should really be like a 5th, 6th rounder.
Now. And I get he's coming off a bad season for him, but like still it's Alvin Kamara. He's got the ceiling there. Maybe people are like, I don't really want to pull for this guy anymore because he seems like, I don't know, he got suspended for, getting in a fight. So like, I don't want to draft him. And, I respect that. Pick the players that you are going to enjoy pulling for. But I agree from a fantasy perspective, a football perspective, I think he should be way higher. For me, I'm going with the Arizona Cardinals because I just I get that this team looks like they're going to go like 3-14, but I think they can still score points and they can still pepper their receivers with targets. I think the defense is going to be the bigger problem of why this team is not performing well throughout the season than the offense. Like, sure, the offensive line probably going to be bad, but they also just got a guard last year that's going to be going into his second year. Kenyon Green should be helping out that offensive line. Like, I don't think it's going to be as bad as everybody thinks. And their pass catchers are free. Like, you can get Marquise Brown as like your 4th or 5th receiver. Rondale Moore is going like in the 12th round, 10th to the 12th round. I know it's not an interesting pick, but James Conner, he just perennially like is good in fantasy, which annoys me because 2 years ago he popped off with all those touchdowns, and last year I was like, it's not happening again, y'all. We're done with this. That was a 1-year thing for James Conner, and then he still did it. So I'm interested in this team, and there's some tight ends that I like getting late with this team, like Zach Ertz. I know he's coming off at ACL, so he might have a slow start. I like him late, but also Trey McBride, like he's basically going for free in drafts right now. So I think the Arizona Cardinals, they're a team that are just way below where they need to be ADP wise.
Even Kyler Murray, getting him in, 12th, 13th, 14th round, even if he misses a few games. I mean, as long as you have another QB or another 2 QBs, that's a huge potential upside in the back half of the season.
Yeah, that's a great point. Have you, so if y'all have taken Kyler Murray, have you taken him in a 2 quarterback build, or are you only doing 3 quarterback builds with Murray?
I took him recently in a 2 QB build with Mahomes, so I cheated a little. I don't need him that much, but I still do 2 and 3 QB builds with him.
Yeah, Benny, what about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. If I get a top 3 quarterback, I'm kind of comfortable taking Kyler as just the second guy and leaving it at that.
Yeah, he's one of those players that I'll take if I wait on quarterback, because I feel nervous about him. I'm like, I don't know, could they just tear this whole thing down midway through the season and be like, Kyler, you're sitting the rest of the year. We need you looking healthy for those draft picks we're going to get for you, or for next year if we decide to stick with you. But I respect the commitment. I can see the pathway for the 2 quarterback build, and it would definitely be unique. I don't think there's going to be many players who are willing to say, yeah, I'll take Josh Allen and Kyler Murray and be done. Like, that just makes me feel uncomfortable in my gut. And I suspect a lot of people will feel the same way and avoid that strategy.
And making Murray even more unique with the week 14 bye, if you can sneak a team with Murray, a player with that type of upside that is already shown into those semifinal and final rounds, you're going to be at a really big advantage.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Awesome. So next, we're going to do the reverse question. So a team that you are fading that you think people are too high on. So Chris, we're going to start with you again. Who do you think people are too high on this year?
San Francisco. I'm going to lock them in.
Oh.
Trey Lance, I don't see him starting, but even if it's going to be a run-heavy team. This has nothing to do with Christian McCaffrey. He's going to get his, but I'm talking 4th round Debo, 5th round Ayuk, 5th round Kittle, and then basically how is all of their weapons going in the top 5 rounds, but their QB is basically free. I'm not a believer in Brock Purdy, and I think if it's a Trey Lance offense, then it's going to be a 14-10 high rushing attack. So I'm staying away from everyone in San Francisco other than Christian McCaffrey.
That is a take. I like that. Wow, I did not expect San Francisco to get name dropped on this one. Benny, what about you? Who are you fading that you think everyone else is too high on?
Just want to say, as a Rams fan as well, I love that. But
if we can beat them,
yeah, right. Just going back to the Niners, though, I think personally, Kittle, I think he's going to be the one that isn't benefiting the most from this QB controversy down in the Bay. But I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons. I
kind of that.
So going with what Chris said, getting a free quarterback when 3 very talented weapons go in the top 8 rounds, something might be up there. And just going back to last year, they ran the ball a lot. I would say that's going to come down a little bit, but they were very efficient when they did it. Now, if that was because they were running the ball when they were down 20 and defenses really weren't expecting it, that's one way you can kind of spin it. But they just drafted a top 10 running back in Bijan as well. So I would more so think that they're going to lean to the ground, and I don't think there's a case where Pitts and London can make it. They're both certainly going to flash, but I wouldn't pencil them into high-end production just yet.
Not to mention Bijan is like a top 3 RB in redraft and a lot of underdog drafts, and I'm not going to have a single share of him.
How dare you? Of course you picked the Atlanta Falcons. What, we have something good finally, and you're just going to take it away from us and be like, nah, we need to fade
Just
you.
an opinion. Just an opinion.
Just for fantasy. They could still be good in real life.
No, I mean, you're probably I should think about that scenario more. I should consider that. I have been a little bit in my Falcons brain, and like I'm here for the vibes. We have all these elite players. Yeah, they could just grind it out and slow the pace down. I think that's something I would love to do a little research on, is just the pace of play too. Like if they're not getting enough plays per game to have a lot of production, like that could sink you right there, right? Like if you're burying a pick on Drake London or Kyle Pitts, when you have someone that's just getting way more opportunities just because their offense is doing more, like I see the case there. I can see the pathway. I disagree. I think the Falcons are going to be great. I think Desmond Ridder is a great late round snag. But for me, the team that I am fading this year that I think people are too high on, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. They make me very nervous because they had a flash in the pan towards the end of last year. And I think this is nothing against Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to make that jump and continue to make that jump. But people forget, like, there were some really bad moments for this team last year still. Like, they got behind in games, and part of the reason they had such good production is because they were having to continue chucking the ball to catch up in junk time. And they did it, right? Trevor Lawrence did a good job coming back in second halves, but that's not a sustainable model for how to build a team long term. What really bothers me about this team is I have some concerns on the offensive line. And if the offensive line can't hold up, that's really going to make the pass game problematic. And I think one of the things that we undervalue in fantasy analysis in general is just the impact that offensive lines can have on team performance and on quarterback performance. So I'm willing to fade the Jaguars this year. There are times I'll take them. Like if I'm correlating with week 17, I would definitely take them. Right. But most of the time at cost, I'm like, really, do we think they're going to all of a sudden have all of these elite players up? Like, are they really going to support Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, and Travis Etienne all as elite fantasy players? I just don't see it.
I agree and disagree with you. There's players I like in Jacksonville at their price, and there's players I don't. We just spoke about it in the chat. Calvin Ridley going in the second round, I was shocked. I guess I hadn't seen the ADP move in a while because I'm usually in slow drafts, but I started one before we started this podcast, and I'm like, he went in the second round above Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, Christian Watson, Amari Cooper, Devontae Smith. No thanks.
That's just why. That's someone, we got some examples later where it's like, I don't know what this person was doing. They just were like, I'm getting my players. I don't care about ADP. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
But the ADP was 25, so right at the 2-3 turn. So it's not like they reach 2-3 rounds for him. His ADP is there.
That makes me uncomfortable. I don't like that.
And just to pile on even more, like Christian Kirk was one of my favorite targets, like back earlier in the summer, and seeing him come off for 2 wide receiver sets in the preseason game with the starters left a really bad taste. But I'm not going to overreact.
Don't overreact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that. Don't overreact on Christian Kirk. I feel like he's been undervalued for a long time. Him being behind Calvin Ridley and ADP has been wild to me. But enough of our team takes. So we're going to talk a little bit about the key differences between Underdog Fantasy and DraftKings Best Ball, because you can draft on other sites besides Underdog Fantasy. I wouldn't recommend all of them, but DraftKings is pretty fun. So just a quick overview of like the scoring differences for folks who haven't played on DraftKings before. So if you've played DFS on DraftKings, you know the score system exactly because it's exactly the same as the DFS contest. But the differences for those who haven't played on DraftKings before is that, well, first off, let's just say Underdog Fantasy, they're half point PPR, pretty standard outside of that. The big difference on DraftKings is you got full point PPR, and there are bonus points available if you, for quarterbacks, if they pass for 300 or more yards, and then if you have at least 100-yard rushing or 100-yard receiving game, and you get 3.3 bonus points for either of those achievements. And so that does really it makes it so where the elite players that are able to have that production can separate more so than what they can in an underdog setting where touchdowns are more valued and just pure yardage is more valued, but you're not getting quite that bonus for those elite performances. Also, the advancement rules are often different, which I think is really important to note. Like on DraftKings, it's very rare for you to have a contest where more than 2 people are advancing past the first round, and even more so in the second and third rounds. And there are even a lot of contests where it's just one person that advance between each rounds until you start entering those like $100 contests. And then once you get up to like really going for the high stakes contest, then there'll be more players advancing from each rounds. Whereas underdog, it really depends on the contest. And that's one thing we probably don't talk about on Underdog enough is you really have to check the advancement rules because even sometimes contests with the same name will have different advancement rules, and you just have to make sure like what you're getting into. So just like be cognizant of that when you're entering contests on DraftKings. Advancement rules are different, but of course, one of the most important differences for how we're going to attack the best ball leagues from a strategy perspective is the ADP. They're going to be different on DraftKings and Underdog. And so we're going to talk about some key players that have just major ADP differences between the two sites that stick out to us, and talk about which site we think is right, where we think we're getting an advantage, and go from there. So Benny, we're going to start with you. What's a player that sticks out to you as having a big difference in ADP on the two sites?
I'm a little bit limited on DraftKings drafting, just a heads up, but I have done enough to formulate a take, I guess. But on DraftKings, they really hate these holdout running backs.
Yes.
Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins. Jonathan Taylor's going a full round behind what he goes on Underdog, and J.K. Dobbins goes in like the 90s compared to the 60s on Underdog. I'm willing to sprinkle in a little bit there, especially Jonathan Taylor. I think Dobbins is really pushed down because he's not known as like quite the pass catcher as some of the other running backs that go around there, which is important in a full point type of format. But someone who goes higher, this isn't a hot take anymore. We already talked about him. Calvin Ridley. I saw him. Chris, I know you said his ADP is at 25 now. He went at 15 in the draft that I posted. So it was, I almost spit out my hard seltzer I was drinking. So.
That's like where he was going back when he was with the Falcons.
Yes.
And he was like, he had that top 10 year. So to take him with 2 years, basically 2 years removed from football, in that range, that's tough.
And in that top 10 year, Matt Ryan actually led the league in pass attempts, and Julio Jones was hurt for half of it. So I think you need some volume, and I don't know if there's going to be that much of that to go around in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, though, coming back to your point on the holdout running backs. I mean, even like Jonathan Taylor earlier in the year on DraftKings, I did a draft early, like I'd say probably it was June. I was able to get Jonathan Taylor with my 3rd pick. He was the 16th overall, which is just like, for a guy who can easily pop off 100 rushing yards in a game and get you that bonus, like why is he falling that far? And I think you're right, Benny, that people are overvaluing the full PPR value, and it's causing some of these running backs like Jonathan Taylor, like Breece Hall, J.K. Dobbins to fade. Chris, what about you? What are some key players where you see the ADP differences that just are shocking to you?
So like we talked about in our group chat, I deleted my DraftKings app at the end of last year. It was tough. It was a tough year for me. I haven't re-downloaded it yet. I've solely been playing best ball on Underdog, but I would like to say it's good to have your own projections. You don't have to do stat projections, but if you have your own rankings and you're able to use that from Underdog to DraftKings, then you can identify some players that you like a lot that are falling on DraftKings versus rising on Underdog and vice versa. So it allows you to be, stay water no matter what those ADPs are and just take advantages of the two sides.
Yeah. So one ADP difference that I thought was particularly interesting that I want to get y'all's take on. Jalen Hurts is QB1 on DraftKings ahead of Mahomes, which it's the reverse on Underdog. So on Underdog, you have Mahomes going off as the first quarterback and then Hurts. And what's interesting is Mahomes is about the same ADP on both sides. And so Jalen Hurts is actually going about almost a half round earlier on DraftKings. So Chris, let's start with you. Like, what do you think about Hurts ahead of Mahomes on a site that's valuing bonuses for pass yards, rush yards, etc.?
I don't think he's going to do enough on the ground to cancel out what the pass yard bonuses that Mahomes is going to get. I have them, I have Hurts as the number 2 QB or basically number 3. Him and Josh Allen are interchangeable, but I have Mahomes far and away above both of those. So I think that's interesting to take him above Mahomes there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like Mahomes getting a 300-yard pass game is way more likely of an outcome on a consistent basis than Jalen Hurts getting either a 300-yard pass game or a 100-yard rush game. Benny, What about you? Got anything to add on Hurts ahead of Mahomes on DraftKings?
I think the public just kind of views it as since Jalen Hurts scored a lot of rushing touchdowns last year, he's going to run a lot this year. And they really think he's a double bonus threat, where that's very unlikely on any given week. So that's not really something I'm betting on. In this format, I would have Mahomes as my quarterback one.
Yeah, one thing that I think people forget too, like Jalen Hurts rushing lines last year almost always hit the under, which when I discovered that, I was blown away. And I decided, of course, it was the 1 week I was like, okay, this is what's happening. Under, and then of course he popped off for the over, like one random fourth yard or fourth quarter rush sent him over. But in general, he was hitting his rushing under, and they weren't like high rushing lines either. They were the type of rushing lines where you're like, oh yeah, he can get 25 yards. That seems easy. But a lot of his rushing came in those 1 yard QB sneaks. And so, yeah, he could end a game with 2 rushing touchdowns, but it could have been because he went 4 rush attempts for 5 yards, 2 touchdowns, not because it was something bonkers where he's getting, 700-800 rushing yards throughout the season. I want to highlight just a couple of other interesting differences. Just first off, quarterbacks seem to be going way earlier on DraftKings in general. I think some of that's because of the bonuses, but I think at times it's going a little bit too far. They're getting pushed up a little bit too much. Taking a quarterback in the middle of the second round, sometimes it just feels really uncomfortable for me, given the players that you're giving up on. One that was fascinating for me, and I want to hear y'all's take on this. Darren Waller is going 58.9 on DraftKings. So he's going in the 5th, 6th round on DraftKings. He's going a full round and a half later on Underdog on a site that values PPR, the full PPR. Darren Waller is getting pushed up. Benny, let's start with you. What do you think about that ADP difference? Where do you feel comfortable taking him that early on DraftKings, or do you think Underdog's right here?
If you could take both of them, meet in the middle, I would be right there with ADP where I would rank them. So I'm kind of comfortable taking them either way. I mean, where you're paying up in DraftKings, you'll find savings later at other positions. I'm a believer in Waller's talent, and I mean, I bet on players' injury pass. They're injured till they're not. So I think he can really pull one off, and he's the clear number 1 option in my opinion. So
yeah. There you go. I'm with you there. I think Darren Waller going higher is good. And then, Chris, I want to get your take on this one, because we talked about how the drafters on DraftKings seem to hate these running backs who don't see as passing a lot. One thing that stuck out to me is James Cook is going ahead of Rachaad White, Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery, and J.K. Dobbins on DraftKings. Chris, do you feel comfortable with that? Are you good with James Cook ahead of all of those players?
As he should. I love James Cook this year.
Oh,
I don't think Damian Harris or I think it's Latavius Murray is in that backfield. I don't know if they combine for like 20 targets this year. And contrary to popular belief, Josh Allen targeted the RB position over 100 times. Singletary had it in the 50s, I believe. I think James Cook could get, I don't know, 50, 60 targets, 160 carries with his efficiency. I would also take him above all of those guys.
That's different than what I would do. I would take him. I would probably take him ahead. I might take him ahead of J.K. Dobbins because I just don't like Dobbins' efficiency and his overall usage. Ahead of David Montgomery. I just love me David Montgomery this year, so maybe I'm biased on that front, but
I don't.
I know. Last one that I just want to. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, I think we've actually had arguments about David Montgomery, so we'll leave that there.
Oh, I forgot about that. So, last thing I want to highlight, just a silly thing. Jalen Waddle is slightly lower on DraftKings, which I don't get because that guy is a target hog. Like, if we're valuing points per reception on DraftKings, let's be consistent, people. If like his ADP needs to be a little bit higher, he gets targets all the time.
With a Waddle, I saw somewhere he's creeping into the 30s, which I'll take him every time. Right
Yeah,
there. 100% exposure if I could.
I love his receiving over this year. It's at like 1,074 yards. I'm like, I think you could break 1,100. That feels very much within the range of outcomes, particularly because Tua's receiving line on Underdog is currently at 3,800. I'm like, okay, you're about to throw. Underdog is thinking you're going to throw for nearly 4,000 yards, and only 1,000 of that is going to Jalen Waddle. Like, I don't buy it. I'm thinking you need to smash that over.
I don't know. I might play the devil's advocate here. His 18 yards per reception last year is going to come down. So he's going to need the targets to go up to also hit that over. A lot of those games, Tyreek Hill was the target monster, and you needed the big play from Waddle. Some games happened, some games didn't. But I would take him all the time in the 30s, but 20 sounds better than 17.
There you go. So
just
we're going to
one more thing real quick. Just a quick general trend between the two sites that doesn't make sense to me. I feel like the wide receiver thirst is like way higher on Underdog compared to DraftKings, even though it's a half PPR format. Just keep that in mind. It makes no sense, but if you look at the ADPs across the board, wide receivers go earlier on Underdog.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. I mean, like I was saying, like being able to take whenever I did my drafts on DraftKings, like I was able to take some running backs early and still get stellar receivers because like they're just falling, which is bonkers. Like I think there was one draft, let's see if I can find it really quickly, where I was able to get Deontay Johnson as my 4th receiver. Like that's sick. And I was able to get Mike Evans as my 5th receiver. I'm like, I'm good. Yeah. That's gotta advance, right? Like we'll be fine. Cool. So we're going to get into the weeds a little bit on some tournament strategy and talk about overlay. And for this, I'm going to turn to Benny to just tell us what is overlay, what do we mean by that term, and how are we using it?
So overlay is when you have a guaranteed prize pool. So if you play DFS, their like millionaire contest each week is guaranteed. They pay out what they say they're going to pay out, regardless of how many people enter it. So in best ball, with it being new, it's definitely gotten a little bit better over the years. A lot of these tournaments do go unfilled, and that's why you see such a large rake with these companies. They got to account for the ones that won't fill. So you got a weird double advantage, kind of, the player does. So with them not filling, you're inevitably going against less people. And while this might not be like too front of the mind in weeks 1 through 14, when you get to the playoffs, limiting your competition that can advance is you're limiting competition. So take any advantage you can get. And going along with that, these companies, they try to fill them as best as they humanly can. So around now, they're going to start giving out a decent amount of freebies, I would imagine, especially over on DraftKings. Underdog isn't really known to do it too much because they kind of fill like that. If you've tried to enter a puppy draft, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, right. But what makes this like really interesting, I gotta give a shout out to my buddy Tom Strachan. He from across the pond. He's at NFL T Strack, NFL _T Strack. He keeps track of this daily and updates the overlay and what he projects it to be. And I salute him for it. And I love the thread every day it comes out. But right now, he thinks weekly winners, the DK Million, and the Drafters Million tournaments are all at risk of not filling. So, I mean, personally, I've already gotten some promos from Drafters, and I can't even play them in my state. So, check your emails, check your DraftKings promos, because as time gets shorter, they're going to be starting to shell out some entries. And it's just a rare opportunity to beat the book in anything and kind of get an edge. But I would say the most intriguing tournament with that is weekly winners, because you're literally against everybody in that tournament every week. So if there's a decent overlay in there, I wouldn't be surprised if I just funnel in like 10 entries the last day it's open. So
Yeah, I like that. And on sites like DraftKings, I mean, and both sites, but DraftKings, I feel like it's more likely you're going to get a tournament not feeling an underdog. And when that happens, I mean, what basically happens is it just means like you can not finish in the top 2 to advance and still advance because they fill the rest of those spots with wild card spots. So I said I'm advancing in 7 of my 16 baseball leagues, but I'm crossing my fingers that I'm going to get a couple wild card spots because I'm in like 3rd or 4th in a couple of others, and I'm like, oh please, like these contests didn't fill, and so hey, maybe it happens, and you get like a second life, like a little rejuvenation to keep on going. So I think that's a very smart way to approach things. Like once the season is getting close, like entering some of these contests just like the last week before the season, and even the last day, to see like what happens and to try and get them so they don't fill. I also will talk about this during the season. I do this for DFS contests, like particularly those one shot, the showdown contests. Like there's a lot of times those don't fill up, or when they do at like the last minute, it's kind of like you get a lot of just like casual players coming in, picking some dart throw players, and they're not really thinking through strategically on their lineup. And so you can gain an edge that way too. So I like that take, and looking at overlay in a way that you can use that to get an advantage. So with that, we're going to turn to a segment I have been looking forward to for a minute. We're going to talk through some best ball teams. I'm going to pull up some actual teams and lineups on this chart that we have had happen, that we submitted to this first one. I'm not going to tell you where this one came from yet. I'm going to let you all guess and wonder. So Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love at quarterback, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, Elijah Mitchell, Raheem Mostert, Dante Foreman. Then you got Tyreek Hill, Christian Kirk, Tyler Lockett, Odell Beckham. And then at tight end down here, you got Mark Andrews, Noah Fant. So I want to get y'all's take on this one. Chris, I'll start with you. What's your take on this draft?
It's solid. I think the wide receiver position after the top 3 is a little dart throwy, but hopefully 2 of those 3 wide receivers will carry the torch at least weekly, so you don't have to ask for one of those high performances every week. I like Mark Andrews. It seems like this person didn't want to risk Mark Andrews being taken before his or her 3rd round pick. Lamar Jackson was early too, so it seems like a stack. So I like that stack. Overall, solid.
Awesome. I love it. Benny, what about you? What thoughts do you have to add to this draft?
I agree with a lot of Chris said. My main takeaway, I would put money that this was drafted a little bit ago, and it may, I would say it's a smaller field contest, but I'm just going off of like where Marvin Jones was drafted. That seems a little different. but taking Mark Andrews, that he's typically a player that I kind of let fall to me, and I'm excited when he does fall to me. I take him just about every time he does. But if this is a smaller field, I think this could easily take down the 12 in advance.
Yeah. So, okay, time for the reveal. This is my lineup. This was my lineup for the Chow Chow, which was a smaller contest. It's $50 entry. And let's see if I could pull up how many people are actually in that contest. Yeah, just like 5,500 entrants overall. So betting on that upside. And yeah, didn't love the receivers in this one, but I came in. I knew I wanted Tyreek, Lamar, and Mark Andrews. And hey, we made it happen.
Jordan Love, Aaron Jones stack. Just seeing that now. That's nice.
Yeah, this was the one I think I referenced this one recently where I had a contest with just Lamar and Jordan Love, and I'm like, please let Jordan Love hit. Like I need him to be decent, like just for 1 week, and then we're good. So here's another one that I wanted to pull up. So Jalen Hurts went the 101 for this person's draft. That's the whole reason I brought this one up. Let's just throw that out there from the get-go. But ends up with Jalen Hurts and Geno Smith at quarterback, and Tony Pollard, Kenneth Walker, Jerick McKinnon as the three main running backs. Interesting situation with the wide receiver has T. Higgins, George Pickens, Jahan Dotson as their top three. And then for tight end, got Dallas Goedert, and Matt Records' favorite tight end apparently is Cole Kmet. So what do y'all think about this one? Where are we going with it? Benny, let's start with you on this one.
There's a lot of reaches here. This person definitely went and got their guy, but great value on Tony Pollard. So I like that at least. But seeing Jalen Hurts at 101 is shocking.
Yeah.
It's tough with Jalen Hurts because that person, obviously 101, no guarantee that Jalen Hurts falls back to them at the 2-3 turn. So it's a kind of an instance of getting your guy. He stacks him with Goddard, or he or she stacks him with Goddard. And this is a true hero wide receiver build with T. Higgins, hopefully locking it down every week. And then everyone else is just dart throws.
Yeah. So this was just a random person I found that I'm playing against in that same Chow Chow league. So I thought it was interesting because I brought this up for a specific reason, because we've talked in the past of like choosing your contest, and people get scared off sometimes, I think, of these like $50 contests. This person just took Jalen Hurts with the first overall pick after putting up $50 on the contest. Like, just because you enter a high value contest does not mean people are doing what we would say is probably best practice and not reaching 2 rounds on a quarterback, right? Like, so people make mistakes at all price brackets and how they're entering these contests. And that was the main reason I wanted to pull this one up. Here's another one. How do we feel about the quarterbacks on this one? Anthony Richardson and Russell Wilson. Chris?
I like Richardson. I think
this.
If he gets all 17 games, I don't see how he doesn't finish as a top 15 QB. Even if he throws for 2,900 yards, 19 touchdowns, he's going to have the rushing upside. I don't like pairing him with Russell Wilson, though. This is where I want to pair him with like a Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, maybe both of them, to get some sort of, comfort in case Richardson just busts.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. Benny, what about you?
This is kind of one where I would say you kind of gotta pick your battles here. I like Anthony Richardson, as we know from last week's show when I was hung out to dry a little bit. Where were you then, Chris? But
I was invited.
I might go with the 3 quarterbacks at that point. But looking at the rest of the draft, I like it. Just with that riskiness at quarterback, though, I probably wouldn't target someone like Jameson Williams, who we know is going to miss like 6 games, maybe.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if this was before or after the suspension hit, but I agree with you. And I do think if this hits, if Anthony Richardson comes out and he has like a RG3 like rookie season, like this is going to be an interesting lineup and probably one that causes me some trouble. So this lineup was submitted by one of y'all. I don't remember who, but this is the Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff at quarterback, which I love. And there's some stacks in here. You got the Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown stack. You've got both Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham stacked with Lamar Jackson. Chris, let's start with you on this one. What do you think of this team? What are some of your takeaways?
I like getting both Bateman and Odell Beckham. It increases your chances of hitting on this Lamar stack. And then also I like, Goff, Brown, and Laporta. Laporta, rookie tight end, but I think he might have the best chance of actually having a fantasy relevant rookie tight end season this year. He's a great pass catcher, and we know Jared Goff loves throwing touchdowns to these random tight ends. We've seen that after Hawkinson left.
Yeah, Benny, what about you? What are you thinking about this one?
I think this person might be a genius, but one interesting thing that they may have thought of while they were drafting this, there's a lot of CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown teams.
Yes.
Just where they lie in the draft. So
they are easy to get on the turn.
Yes. So interesting going with a Pollard Amon-Ra. But I don't believe CD was available. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I was going to say this is an interesting one too, because when I'm looking at the ADP versus the pick, like not a lot of reaching going on. And yet I think it's a really good example of how you don't have to reach to make your stacks and correlations work. Like you've got the Detroit-Dallas Week 17 game laced throughout this lineup, which I really like. And it's done in a creative way, like having Jared Goff, Tony Pollard, and then Robbie. Oh, wait, no, sorry. That's a different stack I was thinking of. And Amon-Ra. I think those are some interesting ones. And Sam Laporta there as well. I also think the Baltimore-Miami stack is an interesting one. With Lamar Jackson, like we said, the two receivers, and then that's where Robbie Chosen comes in. Like I find that fascinating. Like, what if he does pop off in Week 17 just randomly?
You never know. He has the speed, and Mr. McDaniels down there loves speed, so he'll get on the field a little more than people think. Just one note. Where I blew it on this one is the middle of my wide receivers that all of a Week 13 bye. That's going to be a rough one.
Ooh,
it will be a rough Week 13, but it also creates some variance.
Yeah. Good luck on Week 13, buddy.
You have enough wide receivers to cover at least.
Yeah. We're gonna do one more, and then we're gonna hop. So this is it's all like white and bright and hard to look at. That's DraftKings for you. Another thing we should have mentioned about DraftKings, they give you 20 players, where Underdog only gives you 18, which means you get a little bit of an opportunity for some more dart throws. I just want to look at this part of the team. We can look at some of the deeper kind of bench players here, but here we go. This is a clear hero RB strategy, getting Nick Chubb early and then just waiting for Tank Bigsby, and yet still getting that Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack early in the draft. So, Chris, let's start with you. What do you think of this lineup? While you start talking, I'm going to pan to the bench.
Wide receivers are a better play in terms of their variance, their up and downs. So you want to have a wide receiver in that flex position. Hopefully every week. That means you have someone popping off. In terms of running backs, if you have the wide receiver that covers every week on flex, you just need two running backs. One should be Nick Chubb, and then just take a bunch of dart throws. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, and there are definitely some dart throws here that I like. Kendre Miller, Chuba Hubbard, Ty Chandler, Latavius Murray. Those are all players that have shown. Oh, and Elijah Mitchell. Jeez, I like that Elijah Mitchell pick. Benny, what are you thinking about? What are you thinking about this one?
I like the sneaky Bateman throw in there too. He goes. He's another one we could have mentioned on who goes later on DraftKings than Underdog. I think it's about a 20 pick difference.
Wow.
And Marquise Brown, he was around in the late 80s in this draft. Spoiler alert, this is my team too. But Marquise Brown.
We didn't do any of my teams.
I'm not so big on Marquise Brown, but when he's around that late, I'm definitely willing to pull the trigger.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. And then we're going to talk about this one. Yes. Oh, hey, here's Chris. So getting Justin Fields, Dak Prescott, and Ryan Tannehill. Kareem Hunt in there. That one stuck out to me. But you got Jahmyr Gibbs, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb, and then you went 3 tight ends with Njoku, Laporta, and McBride. So Benny, we'll start with you on this one, and then we'll let Chris brag about his team. Benny, what do you think about this team?
I like the team. I might have. This depends how you feel about Dak. I might have stopped at 2 quarterbacks, but that's being really nitpicky. What you got, where you got CeeDee Lamb, I can tell you, I'm very jealous.
Whoa, pick 16.
Yeah, I've been trying to get him to fall a little bit like that. In 85 drafts now. So kudos to you. That's a really good pick. And Laporta bringing it back too. I really like this team.
Appreciate
All right, Chris,
that.
what you got to say about this?
I did the 30-second draft here to have one to submit for the podcast. I thought about stopping with Dak Prescott and not taking Tannehill. I just know Tannehill. Sometimes he has those games where he has 2 rushing touchdowns. If he sneaks in there for a couple of times, I feel like he's more valuable than like a Chase Brown or something like that. Especially with hopefully Williams is healthy. So if he is, I like having 4 running backs, plus we'll see where Kareem Hunt lands if he does. And then I was ecstatic with CeeDee Lamb. I wasn't even thinking about him. I'm like, oh, he's still there. Okay.
Yeah, that's
but
incredible.
I think I'm a little shallow on, the back half of my wide receivers. Hopefully either Van Jefferson or Justin Ross has some big games.
Yeah, I love it. Well, this has been great. This has been helping us really get to do talk about our strategy in practice. We've talked a lot of different strategy points over the past several weeks. And here we really got practical, looking at some actual lineups that we and others have done so far. But that is going to be all for this week. Before you go, don't forget, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And remember, you can find the 2023 Ultimate Week 17 Best Ball Study Guide at clubfantasyffl.com. Reminder that our Women of Fantasy Football podcast season 4 continues on Wednesday, where Kelly Singh and Faith Enos will interview Hope Myers and Vikings beat reporter Lindsey Young. And we will be raffling off a signed Justin Jefferson and a signed Adrian Peterson jersey. The link to enter is in the chat. All raffle entries benefit Galvanize, which provides workshop trainings and more to support women looking to start or advance their careers in sports. Rundown of all of our shows. There's a lot. Dynasty After Party did a mock draft last night, which I thought I had Dynasty mock drafts out of my system for the year, but they brought it back and I joined. So check out that mock draft. It's on our YouTube page already. This morning we had our weekly Mock It Like It's Hot show. Tomorrow night, Kelly Singh and Adam Hollis will be bringing you Who's Your Caddy, our DFS golf show. And Wednesday night is the kickoff, or is the continuation of our Women of Fantasy Football shows. And we'll have some ranking shows coming up early, so stay tuned for that. We have covered all 32 teams on our website. You can catch all those articles at clubfantasyffl.com. But for Chris Molina at ChrisMo2413 and Benny Israel at Benny_bestball, I'm Austin Amandolia at Austin_FFL on Twitter. And this has been Summer School. Until next time, remember, defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. And best ball wins money. See y'all.